And we are live.
What's up, everybody?
We got a special guest today, the first guest on the podcast, the American Nomad podcast. Thanks for joining me. I am Rav Holly, the American Nomad. And today in the studio, we have one of my best friends, Noah Sargent.
Woo! Glad to be here, Rav. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you guys, talk about some stuff.
I'm going to let you go ahead and talk to the camera, and I'm
Sure.
going to share this on Facebook really quick.
Okay, cool. So Rav and I go back to Hollywood, and we met on American Horror Story. Been friends for a while. Had some good times. He shot my wedding. That was probably a really, really awesome highlight at the Jim Henson Studios. And we connected because he showed up to set with Bertha. And I was like, dude, I have a toy hauler. So, that's kind of how we first got plugged in. We were both PAing and working on Hollywood sets. And so it's been a few years now, a couple crazy stories, some good, some bad, but mostly good. And so, yeah, he's got a really cool community of people. So it's good to see people that want to connect with Rav and his story and the things that he does on YouTube. It's kind of fun.
You want me to tag you or not?
Either way,
Okay.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Noah's a little bit afraid of my my pit bull hater squad that for my political rants.
Yeah, for sure.
So don't be going after Noah because he's one of the most unpolitical guys I know. I wish I was still that way, because when I was in my 20s, I'm just like, how old are you now? I'm 26.
29.
Are you serious?
I'll be 30 in 2 months. Yeah, a month and a half.
Time is flying, dude. I'm gonna be dead by next week.
Hope not.
Yeah. Anyway, So when I was in, I didn't get political until probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I really didn't care anything about politics.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, to me, it didn't matter which side, Democrat or Republicans, they were all corrupt. But I've just gotten, I think I really do, because I used to have older individuals when I was really young in my early 20s, trying to talk to me about politics. And I was like, dude, I don't care. Whatever, you know what I mean? I don't want to, it's not my thing. But I just think it's something that is embedded in our brains or in our DNA as we get older.
Yeah, and I think just the thought of, I want to put in the research and time to really think through something myself and not just be told what's right and wrong, so to speak, from people's perspective. So to me, I really have to invest the time and energy to really learn fully what the story is and not just the headline,
Yeah. And I'm guilty of not doing that sometimes because where we are right now the lines are so thick in the sand, and if you're on the left side and I'm on the right side,
sure.
The problem is there will be things. I don't agree with everything Trump does. I'll be the first one to tell you that. I don't. You can't, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But, because, he is who he is. But that's why I do respect the guys, because he just doesn't care. He's going to do what he wants to do. You know what I mean? But the lines are so deep in the sand that nobody's going to admit, even when, it's like Trump did. He said, when he was running for president, he goes, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and nobody's going to care. And that's actually very true. I mean, everybody be like, oh no, he didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
It was an accidental discharge.
Yeah.
We just need to send him to weapons school so he can learn trigger discipline.
Well, sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So, we got 3 people in the room. Welcome,
Nice.
guys. We're running late today on the podcast. It's all Noah's fault. He was supposed to be here at 7:30 and he got here like at 6:58. The truth is we are streaming this on this brand new mixer. If you can grab that one, Noah,
Sure.
maybe. So this is a brand new piece of equipment. This is the old one. And this is the old Yamaha, and it's going to be going to a buddy of mine that is picking it up to start his podcast. And I got this one because it's supposed to be a mixer for dummies. Basically, this is actually an audio mixer for like a band, and Noah's a musician. So this is a real mixer. This is more of a podcaster mixer. I'm a podcaster. I'm not a mixing genius. When I bought this mixer, I literally hooked it up and it just worked. This one, I've been working on it since about 9:45 this morning trying to get it to work, and I never did get it to work, and Noah came in here and got it to work in 5 minutes. So I was just having a playback issue. You couldn't hear any audio, and it was because I had it set to line instead of USB.
Yeah, and this thing's pretty cool. It does have the compressor on here, which would help make everything sound more even.
Yep.
But
Yep.
It's all good. This sounds pretty good so far. Hopefully we've got good levels and everything figured out.
Yeah, you look like you're a little higher than me, but I think we're pretty close.
Yeah, someone let us know in the comments if
Yeah.
my mic's too hot or
Yeah, how do
whatever.
we sound, guys? We're, like I said, we're on a brand new piece of equipment. Now the funny thing is these two pieces of equipment, they look almost identical.
Mhm.
This one, you can buy two of those for what this one cost.
Oh wow.
Yeah. This one is exactly twice what that one is.
Mhm.
And that was the #1 podcast mixer
Mhm.
until this one came out.
Oh,
Now
cool.
this is the one everybody wants. The reason I really did want this one is because if I do like RTR or something like that, you can literally take like a battery pack,
Mhm,
you know, and just hook this and then power it off a battery pack, or you can power it off your laptop, or it takes 4 AA batteries.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you don't have to actually have a power supply.
Yeah, and it interfaces, and then you have multiple monitor outs. So I could have headphones, you could have
Right,
headphones,
yeah.
independent levels. So that's cool.
And that one had all of this. You can see all the stuff, the mic for the headsets, and then, you know, the power supply, the power over there, all that stuff that goes with it. Yeah.
Oh, you have some
So
extra
this,
accessories there,
so this, all it takes is the USB go into the computer, and that's all this thing has.
Okay.
It's amazing.
Yeah. A little more condensed.
Yes, sir.
It's exciting. Yeah, you can tell I'm a gearhead. I'm a little bit
We
of a nerd.
both are. We probably lost everybody.
Yeah,
Everybody's
yeah.
like done. They're over this podcast. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today. Again, here on American Nomad. I've started the schedule. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7:30. Like I said, we're running a little bit late today because we were having some major technical difficulties. I was with this new piece of gear. Thank goodness Noah came in because I'd still be messing with it if he hadn't showed up.
Well, it worked out. So I hope you didn't hear that.
I cannot get that shut off.
Facebook. Hey, it's letting you know though.
Yeah. Hey, Mike Pierce. What's going on, buddy? Thanks for joining us, Mike. If that's you, I don't have the comments turned on. Let me get the comments turned on so I can see.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, okay. Here we go. They're just.
Oh, they're in the far
Yeah.
corner. I think your screen's a little too big, buddy.
Yeah. It gets too big.
You know how like some people harass you in the comments? I get to do that, but in real life. So.
Take it easy.
Let's see.
What am I doing wrong? I'm supposed to be able to make. Oh, this is still up.
Rav promises me that like 20 years ago,
There we go.
he was the sharp guy in the room.
Dude, I built. So listen to this. Before anybody had a PC in their house, I worked at the Sheraton Hotel, the ITT Sheraton, which is at LBJ and Central Expressway. It's a Westin now, but back in the day, it was there was lots of Sheratons. You'd see Sheratons, but if it didn't say ITT on it, it wasn't a corporate Sheraton. It was a franchise Sheraton.
Okay.
But or like Trump does with his name, putting it on a building, but it's really not his building. So people did that with hotels with Sheraton. You can throw that back over there. But an ITT Sheraton, man, it was actually a corporate Sheraton owned by Sheraton. And they ended up bringing in new computers, new computer system when the 486DXs came out, which was the very first computer, Packard Bell, Hewlett Packard, that you could go into a store and buy a PC.
Oh.
It was a 486DX. Or you could get a 486SX, which is a little lower end chip. But so we had all of these dummy stations at the hotel, probably 50, 60, maybe 100 of them. Like Banquets had one because they were all hooked to a mainframe that was in the basement. Back in the day, all the computers ran off a mainframe in the basement. So you had these dummy machines that didn't have a hard drive in them or didn't have anything in them because the real computer was the expensive server that was in the basement. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they're all connected to that hardware that was probably really loud and had to be somewhere else.
Yes.
And
so that was all in the basement. So you didn't have any hard drive or sound card or any of that kind of stuff or a decent video card, but it was a real computer. And so the case and everything was a 386DX. So it had a 386DX chip in it with a 10 megahertz boost. Well, they took all these out and just stuck them on the mezzanine. So every time I'd go up to like the 5th floor, which was the mezzanine floor, it was a whole floor that was just like a warehouse for the hotel.
Wow. Yeah. And
it was literally a floor in between 4 and 5. Does that make sense? And you had to have a special key to get to that floor, and it was just for hotel employees. And I would come out, and right in one of the cages, the cage to the left, as soon as you came out, was like was probably more. It's probably like 100, maybe 150 of these dummy machines that had been scattered all throughout the hotel. Because anybody that was doing anything with the hotel had to have that computer. Does it make sense? It'd be just like this computer here, everybody's computer being tied together if we all work for the same company.
So was that like mid 90s or early 90s?
This was right when I got my computer running for the first time. It was, I got the computer, but it took me a while to figure out and learn how to build it. So it was right when Selena got killed, the Tejano sinker, which I think was right at 1995.
Okay.
So my buddy Bill Hill, he retired from the Coast Guard, but I worked with him, and he was the first one to get me in computers. And I thought I was giving him a hard time about it because he was my age. He was late 40s. You know, I was like, that's for geeks, dude. Or, you know, that's like, I mean, all I can think is like, they had these hacking movies back in the 80s, you know what I mean? Like, these whiz kid computer stuff. And so I was like, yeah, it's like, that's not really my thing, dude. I like to play golf and, you know, be physical, and sit in front of computers, not really my thing. And he goes, let me bring mine in. And this is when I was working at Embassy Suites before I moved to Sheraton. And because I was wanting a computer, but they were $1,500-$1,600 to go buy one because you couldn't get them, and they were hard to find. But you had to wait till a retail store had one. And the first retail store I remember having them was Circuit City, which was a TV store, and they had like two. I was like, holy crap, they have computers in here. I remember seeing them. Anyway, Bill Hill brings his computer to Embassy Suites one night, unhooks the whole thing, and I mean, this is a same thing as I got here. It's a big desktop, and brings it to work and hooks it up in one of the vacant rooms that we had out of service to do make ready in it at Embassy Suites. And he hooks it all up, and he goes, I want to show you this computer. And he hooks it up, and he pulls up Doom. Remember Doom?
Yep.
And so I'm thinking he's going to bring up, you know, because I took programming when I was in junior high school or middle school, because it was a thing that we did in the school. And that was on an old Trans 80, which was a Texas Instruments computer that cost, I think, like $25,000 back in those days. Yeah, this was in the 80s. So I hadn't seen a computer since then. So I'm thinking monochrome, you know, and he pulls up Doom, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And he starts playing it. And now if you look at it, it's so antiquated because of what, you know, like we have Call of Duty and, you know, Halo, which you love now. And I was just like, this is incredible. And so I started playing, and we would get calls throughout the night, and we would take turns because you could only play one person. So we would take turns. So you'd watch the other person. Then when he died, would switch chairs. And I left there that night going, I must have a computer. And so a few months later, I find myself working at I got a pay rate offered to go to ITT Sheraton, which was more money from Embassy Suites. And I'd been at Embassy Suites for 3 years, and they weren't going to offer me a raise. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bounce over here. And plus, it was more technical engineering for ITT Sheraton. They put more, they wanted you to have more knowledge, and they sent you to school to learn refrigeration and stuff like that. So I moved over to ITT Sheraton. And then when I first got over there, the first thing I noticed was all those dummy computers. So I called my friend Bill Hill, and I'm like, hey man, this is before cell phones. So, you know, I had to call him. And I'm like, hey man, we have like all of these computers up on a mezzanine, and they look like real computers. And he goes, I'll come over there and take a look tomorrow. And so he came by and he looked at him. He goes, yeah, these are all just dummy stations that run off your mainframe in the basement. But he goes, you take one of this is a real computer. He goes, you take this thing and put a hard drive in it, and a sound card and a video card, and yeah, you'll have a computer just like mine. It just won't be quite as fast because a 386DX and a 486DX. So it's just one version difference, which is nanoseconds, which people don't understand. So I was like, well, will this computer be fast enough to play Doom? He goes, oh yeah.
That's all you cared about is Doom.
Because it'll be plenty fast enough. And so I ended up I had to put in a request, because anything in the mezzanine that was used, because most of the stuff that people wanted was furniture, like coming out of the rooms, because there was old or when they would change out a set of furniture and put new furniture in there, the old furniture would go over there, and then they would auction it off. And then the hotel would actually have auctions for all the employees, like every Saturday, once every 3 or 4 months, to get rid of stuff. And it was always furniture, beds and shit stuff I didn't need because I had a house. But I ended up putting in a request to see if I could have one of the computers. And it took like, I think 2 weeks for it to come back because it had to go all the way to the main office. And I was like, and it was funny because I remember thinking I hadn't heard, and I came in one night and hadn't heard anything. And I was like, you know what? They're not going to give me one of those computers. They're probably going to sell them, or, I was thinking. And then sure enough, in my inbox, yes, you can take whichever one you want. I was like, oh my God. So I was so excited. And then monitor as well. They said there's monitors over there in the corner, grab a monitor as well. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And the monitor ended up being crap. It was like a monochrome monitor. I ended up having to get a monitor, or my buddy Bill Hill actually gave me one. But I took that computer home and I put a Sound Blaster sound card in it. I put a video card in it. And the main thing I had to do was put a hard drive in it and load DOS 6.0 on there.
Ooh, wow.
And then I had to upgrade it to DOS 6.22. And
then
like
a 5-inch floppy or whatever.
A 5.22-inch floppy.
Yeah.
And then Windows 95 came out. And when Windows 95 came out, I had to have that. And I ended up finding out that you could just add, you just added Windows. I got to backtrack. It was not Windows 95. It was Windows 3.0 came out. And then Windows 3.1 came out. And then Windows 95 came out. So I went to Windows because you could boot into DOS. And then from DOS, you could type in WIN at your C prompt or whatever. If you had 2 hard drives, wherever you had Windows loaded. So a lot of times you'd have a little tiny, because you got to remember a 300 megabyte hard drive was huge back then.
Sure.
Yeah. So you might have like a 300 megabyte hard drive as your main drive or your C drive, but then you would have a storage drive just like you do now. But the storage drive might be 600 megabytes. You know what I mean? And so you would load all of your programs here. You would load them, but it would load over there. DOS was over here, but Windows was over there. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So you would you'd have to type from C prompt to D prompt. And I can't remember how you did that. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But you had to actually give the DOS command because you couldn't there was no mouse to change from one drive to the next. You had to physically type in the command to get from C drive to D drive.
I'm glad they added that.
And then once you got the D, you type in WIN and Windows would start up.
Yeah. I used Windows 3 barely in 3.1 in elementary on the computer labs, but at home it was 95. So that was the first OS I really got used to. Doom was the first real game I got into too.
Thanks for making me feel really old.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But yeah. So I used to be pretty much a computer nerd, and the stuff all came very easy to me. And by 96, I was doing home calls on my own, fixing people's computers.
Cool.
Yeah. Especially a lot of elderly people that were just getting computers, and then they would literally just mess them up by just not knowing how to load stuff. They try to load software and corrupt, because Windows 95 was very easy corruptible.
Oh, wow.
And it had all of these safety measures where you could reboot it and stuff like that. And I learned right away the best thing to do was just uninstall it and install it again, which took about 4 hours. So
I remember there was a CD, I forget the name of it now, but for some reason as like
America Online.
Yeah, as a 10-year-old.
Got mail.
As a 10-year-old, I thought that's the only thing you need to connect to the internet. So I put the CD in and I was like, not sure why it's not working. Like, those concepts never really.
Yeah, you didn't realize you had to have an OS operating system to put that in there. Yeah, I remember so I had, I got my computer together quick enough that I was able to get on the BBBs. BBS, the BBS system.
Oh, okay.
So they were bulletin board systems, and you had to have a number to whatever bulletin board system that was. So let's say you had a bulletin board system, it was your baby. So it had to be on your server. You had to make a server that had this bulletin board system on there, and your phone number would be into your bulletin board system. So let's say you had one for Noah's lighting. So you're giving lighting tips, or, hey, I bought this light and this is how you set it up. You could write out, put a picture of the light and then write out about the light and the specs and stuff like that.
Early blogging.
And I would dial into your BBS system and go, oh my God, Noah got this new light. That's cool. And so you could just kind of, it was kind of like yellow sticky notes everywhere. And there was very few graphics, and only the people with the fastest connections could put any graphics on their bulletin board systems. And then we started getting discs for actual ISPs, internet service providers, which the first one I had was Prodigy.
Okay.
Yeah, Prodigy was the very first internet service provider I had, and then after Prodigy, it was kind of like the deal with MySpace, and then you had Facebook.
Mm-hmm,
So it was kind of like one of those deals. So everybody had Prodigy, that was anybody that was doing internet.
Sure.
And then we went, a disc came in the mail for CompuServe.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people jumped off of Prodigy and went to CompuServe but Prodigy was faster and was more for the techie people, but CompuServe was pretty. You know what I mean? It was really, it had more graphics, and it was the interface was way more user friendly. But then in about 97, 98, everybody got a disc in the mail that was America Online 3.0. They went to 3.0, I remember. I don't even remember 1.0. I remember 3.0. But anyway, we all got this disc for America Online. And I scoffed at it when I saw it in the mailbox. I was like, this is, because I'd already heard all the news, and I'd read some articles about it. So I was hating on it before I even got it. But I was like, well, I'll take it in and, see, because they were giving you 300 free minutes. So I was like, that's a lot, 300 free minutes. Because I was playing Doom, and after Doom, I was playing Duke Nukem 3D, but I wasn't spending an hour, 2 hours maybe playing that. So I wasn't spending a whole lot of time on the computer. So I was thinking 300 minutes, that's going to be plenty for a month. You know what I mean? It's 300 free minutes a month. So I was like, I'll load the disc. I loaded the disc, and the graphics interface was so good, I burned up the 300 minutes in like 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it was
5 hours. So.
and then it was like $3.49 a minute after that. So my first AOL bill was $369 for the first disc that I got.
Gee.
And then my AOL bill averaged about $300 to $380, $90. I tried to keep it under $400 for like a year. It was ridiculous because it was just, there was so much stuff on there compared to what we had.
Mm-hmm.
The IMs, the instant messaging. So like if you had a computer, I had a computer, you could sit down on your computer and dial into instant messaging, and it would show Rav's on right now. So you could just send me a message. Same thing with, because we didn't have cell phones at that time. There was no cell phones.
Yeah.
So
how did you go from like being a computer nerd to being interested in photography? And I know you made the digital switch too from,
So this is an interesting story, and I'm going to give it away right here. So this is a, what would you call it? It's
like exclusive.
This is an exclusive right here. This is a Rav exclusive. Thanks to Noah. So, I had always been a hobbyist photographer for years, and my first camera is right down there if you want to grab it on the bottom shelf. Yep. Yeah. So I took photography in school, and ended up getting this camera used from a student previously that had graduated and was upgrading to a Nikon. And this was pretty much the camera that every school kid that took photography got. And for, taking pictures for the yearbook and stuff like that out of the football games and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I literally learned nothing. Yeah. Because I was in a class with all girls.
Oh, so you're distracted, huh?
So I was a little bit distracted. So I literally learned nothing, but I had the camera. And I kept the camera, and I was like, one of these days I'll learn how to use this camera. And when the computer thing came around and I bought my first house, like an idiot, we had some Encyclopedia Britannica. You know what Encyclopedia Britannicas are?
I've heard of it, but I actually don't know what it is.
So there used to be these salesmen. There was always these salesmen that sold Kirby vacuum cleaners, which was like an $800 vacuum cleaner in the mid 90s.
Wow.
It was like $899 for a vacuum cleaner. And everybody had one because it was like, oh, wow, you got a Kirby vacuum cleaner. You know what I mean? And so when we bought our house, the first thing we did was buy a Kirby vacuum cleaner for $899 and then Encyclopedia Britannicas. And I forgot to tell you, they turned the air conditioner off at around 6 o'clock because I started getting hot too. I was like, oh, is the temperature going up? We got all these lights on. It was nice and cool.
It's all the eyeballs on us right now.
For sure. We actually have 4 people in the room. Welcome, guys.
Cool.
So anyway, I I had this camera, didn't learn how to use it. And when we got the Encyclopedia Britannicas, I had it in my office on a shelf.
Those are just like basically the year like 1995 and all the history of that year kind of deal.
Yep.
Yeah, my grandparents have a set of that.
And they're very informative,
Mhm.
and they have the basics of everything in there. So one night I was at my office and I looked at that camera and I was wanting to take some pictures, and I was looking at Polaroids and stuff like that, which I have down there as well. But it's not a real picture, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
wanted a picture I could blow up of my family. My kids were little at the time, and I was really wanting to take some real pictures. And so I was like, well, I have this professional camera, but I had no idea how to use it. So I went right into our living room, and I bought these big old entertainment center that was the cool thing to have back in the day. These giant entertainment centers with a huge 32-inch, which is a huge TV back then. The tube TV,
the tube
that went in the
TVs,
middle of it, and then you had bookshelves on the side. And got the C for camera, and started reading the encyclopedia for cameras. And then I went to P for photography, and literally spent like a week studying the encyclopedia and learned how to use this camera.
Cool.
And learned that, and the funny thing was, the coolest thing about it was when I got the camera, the C, and it went to C and C something else. There was 2 different encyclopedias for camera. It had this exact camera in it. This was the camera that everything went. Yeah.
That's super cool.
I have to figure that out one of these days. So anyway, I figured it out by using the encyclopedia, and started learning photography with this camera. And then the first pictures I took, I went out and got the film, which was like 400 speed film, because film was like 400, 600, 800 speed film. And so if you were going to be bright daylight, you would want 400. Darker, you'd want 800. And ended up getting film, shot 2 rolls of film, 2 rolls of 36 exposures per roll. And then, so what is that? It's the 72 pictures or something like that. So I don't like to wait on anything, that. So
Sure.
I took the film right down to like the Sammy's camera at the mall, where they had 1 hour exposure, or 1 hour, they do your pictures in 1 hour. This is way back in the day. So I turned them in, and then I left, and then they're like, they'll be done in an hour. So I went and ate in the mall, and it was at the Town East Mall, and I'll never forget. And then I go back and pick them up, and like out of all of those shots, like 4 of them, you could see 4 of them. Yeah. So they were asking me, what did you have the aperture set on? What did you, and I was like, oh man, I don't even really know. And so that's what I was like, I need to go back and study the encyclopedia some more, because I saw that stuff in the encyclopedia, but I really didn't understand what it meant. I didn't understand what these dials, they looked like Japanese, or Chinese writing to me. But then I started reading the encyclopedia again. And I'm like, I got to really learn this. And it had taught me that there was a battery in here, but I didn't understand that the battery gives you a exposure meter in the to tell you that you're exposed. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, it just clicked. And then everything kind of started clicking.
Like that notification.
So it says, JBK says Raph sounds thicker and Noah thinner. Well, that's because I'm a real man, JB.
Ooh.
Take it easy.
I know the nerd answer to that, but tell us your story first.
So we're using 2 different kind of mics. I've got a dynamic mic, and he's got a condenser mic. So this is a $500 mic, and that is a $100 mic. So it's a little different.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. And then I tend to back off a little bit. So if I come a little bit closer, I'll probably sound more like Rav. That's the proximity effect for those nerds out there like me.
Very true. Matilda, what's going on, Matilda? Dang, I wasn't notified. I checked at 7:30, didn't see you. Yeah, we're running late today because we're having technical difficulties with this new mixer. But anyway, I used the encyclopedia, learned how to actually do real photography, started taking a lot of pictures with this, getting some different lenses for it. And then I started picking, once I got really into computers, I started wanting to web pages or web design started coming up.
Oh, yeah.
So I jumped right into that. I was going to be a web designer. So I started learning HTML and HTML. And then I ended up doing a couple of websites. I ended up doing a website for my step aunt and uncle that had an RV park called Banna Circle down close to Austin at Lake Buchanan. Is it Lake Buchanan? I believe it's Lake Buchanan. It's
That
been a
sounds
while.
familiar.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's like 60 miles from Austin or something like that. But I was in Dallas. And so for their park, I needed photos. So I called Austin and talked about 4 different photographers. Ended up actually meeting one of the photographers who had, he had like real light stands and C stands and what was I was talking about Avenger. He had a real Avenger with a real parabolic on, like back in those days, it was like $3,000.
Oh, wow.
The stand was probably 2,500 and the parabolic was probably 3,000 or 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And the one light, he had, $10,000 at least. And, but it was a big, fashion parabolic. And I'd never even seen one, it was basically this light, but in a freaking, a Bentley version.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Super, super expensive.
Crazy.
He could take it up like 12, 14 foot in the air. You know what I mean? In his huge studio. And, I was like, man, this is super cool. But I had tried to hire him to go down to Lake Buchanan and take the photos for the website I'd designed because I had to have photos. And he kept telling me, yeah. I'm like, how much will you charge me? And I think he quoted me like $300. I'm like, yeah, and then he quoted me like $300, like he felt bad about it. So it just made me feel like maybe he didn't think I was serious or, or maybe he just, because he did catalog stuff and maybe he thought it was beneath him to take pictures of a RV park. I couldn't figure out what it was.
Sure.
So finally I gave up on him, got in the yellow pages because that's all we had back then. There was no Google yet. And got in the yellow pages, called a couple other photographers in Austin. A couple of them, the numbers were dead. Finally found a couple other photographers, talked to them, or one, it was one at a time, scheduled it, never showed up. Called another one, scheduled it, never showed up. So my aunt and uncle had paid me for the website, were paying me for the website, and they ended up paying me before I finished the website. So what I did is I took all the money that they paid me for the website and the new Kodak DCS 315 had just come out. And that was the first digital camera. And I read a big article on it and was like, man, this is going to change everything because it was a DSLR. And ended up buying one as soon as they come out. And it was built on a Nikon Prenora body. And I went down and took the pictures myself. And I still have them. And then that Nikon Prenora, it was a Kodak internals. And it was really difficult to use. It was the TIFF files instead of RAWs. It had TIFF. It was a pain in the butt.
Probably took forever to load and
it was super slow because it was the right time on the, that was 1999. And then in 2000, the Nikon D1 come out. And when the D1 come out, I jumped on it, bought the D1. So in that scope of time, I went from 95 learning computers to getting into photography. And by 99, I was doing photography for the websites I was designing. But I was doing the websites was my key, what I wanted to do. I wasn't there to do photography. I just picked up photography so I could complete my websites because I was getting some big quotes, big money from the websites. And then Dreamweaver came out. Dreamweaver MX came out on, what was the suite?
Not Adobe, was it?
Yeah, it was Adobe. It was Adobe Suite. Yeah, it was Adobe
It's
Suite.
Adobe today. I wasn't sure if it was back then.
The Adobe Suite came out and it had Dreamweaver MX on there, and it just made websites just drag and drop easy almost. Not like it is today, like cascading style sheets, but it was a lot easier than just writing code.
Sure.
So I saw right away that there was going to be way too many people that everybody could figure that out. So that was going out the window. So that's when I kind of changed avenues and said, you know what, I think I'm going to try this photography thing. And Neiman Marcus was looking for a photographer in Dallas to shoot their spring collection out at the American Beauty Mill. And I was like, yeah, I don't have a chance at that. But I was like, why not? So I submitted for it and got hired for it. They paid me $700 a day. And I thought I was rich. I was like, man, I'm in the money.
Those first big days are like the best day of your life.
And then it was a real photo shoot, which it's so funny because I've only been, I've had a lot of real photo shoots, but it hasn't been near as many of those as I thought there was going to be, throughout the years. Sure. I mean, it was when we had craft services, we had a producer, we had a stylist, we had two MUAs, two hairstylists. I mean, there was a crew, is what I'm saying. It wasn't like me as the photographer, hiring you to help me with lighting, hiring Justin to help me run cables, and trying to put a little crew together of people that I know. It was a real production photo shoot, like like a movie or a
great.
TV show.
Yeah.
And that's how I really took off and got into photography. And I had my photography business was my actual name at the time, because that's what they said, or every photographer just used their name. So my photography business was my first and last name with the word photography. And I went down to this website seminar, or like a website seminar, like a domains, this guy that was an expert in domains and buying domains and building your website and all this stuff down in Austin. And I paid like $300 for this seminar. I went down there for like a day for the speech and everything. And he had this little questionnaire. I can't remember the guy's name, but he had this little questionnaire. You had to fill it out before you went in for the seminar. And you filled it out, like, do you have it said, do you have a website? And that back in those days, probably 1 out of 10,000 people had a website, if that. Yeah.
Crazy.
And so I filled it out, and this is 96, 97, filled it out, go in, and no, it wasn't. It was around 98, somewhere in there. And I filled mine out, and I go in, and there's probably 150 people at the seminar. I mean, it's in a ballroom at a hotel, or a convention center thing at a hotel, or the banquet room or something, decent sized room. And real stage up there, and he's up on the stage. And the first thing he goes is he starts going, he goes, so did everybody get their questionnaire been filled out? And everybody's, yeah. And he goes, okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is domain names. He goes, I bet everybody in here thinks they have the best domain name for their website. And he goes, so I got a chance to quickly scan through some of the cards, and I picked out the card with the worst domain name in here. And I just finished my website. I designed it myself. I just finished it because I did all the graphics, all the banners, everything. And it took me a week and a half, 2 weeks. In Photoshop, back in those days, in Photoshop 3.0, it's a lot harder than it is now to design those banners. One banner would take me all day to design a banner.
Wow.
And so I just finished my website, because basically what you did is you put your website together, and then you put the graphics in it, figured out the graphics, because you had to size the graphics by hand. You didn't drag and pull them around. You had to put 300 by 400.
It's all custom.
And so I just gotten the website finished. I was so excited. I bought my domain name, everything, which was my first name, Holly Photography. And he goes, here's the worst domain name of everybody in here that I was able to look through and scan through. This is the worst one. And he goes, Holly Photography. And I was like, that's me. I was like, how could it be the worst? I was thinking to myself, how could it be the worst one? That's great. It even rhymes. Holly Photography. It rhymes. I like the way it sounds. And then he started talking about the reason it was horrible is, he goes, so let's take this domain name and let's break this down. He goes, spell photography, just randomly. And this girl goes, PHOOTO. That's what I'm talking. Spell photography. He started going around the room, like 5 people calling him, and they were on the spare of the moment, so they can spell photography. He goes, so how many of you just didn't get to his website because you spelled photography wrong?
Yeah. You can't just Google it, or,
Yeah. He goes, you never put a word like photography in a domain name. And then he started going on. And so basically what he said was, he goes, think about it. And this is what was happening at the time, is Kentucky Fried Chicken, because of the web, was going to KFC. Southwestern Bell, which was a phone company, was going to SBC. All of these different companies were shrinking their names to make them web friendly. So KFC became KFC.com. That's really easy to spell, really easy to get to.
Sure.
And then he actually had some one-on-one with me after, because he felt bad that he had singled me out. And he goes, go to your room right now, or when you go to your room tonight, he goes, get on your computer, and he goes, real fastly, just type your domain name in there and see how many times it comes up every time. And I knew how to type. I could type like 133 words a minute at the time. Every single time I'd miss photography and spell it wrong.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And I'd get a 404. Back in those days, it was just a 404 not found. And so he taught me a valuable lesson. He goes, you need to shrink that down and get it as less letters as you can. And I was like, and then my first name has two letters of the same.
Sure.
And he goes, you got to get rid of that. And I was like, okay. I'm just thinking, I got to go back and redo my whole website and my whole domain. I got to buy another. I'm gonna have to buy another domain name. And so it wasn't about 2 or 3 weeks after that I had the photo shoot for. I'd already had this shoot. This is when I paid. One reason I paid for the seminar, because I already had this shoot booked for Neiman Marcus for their spring collection. So I knew that was coming up, and I go to the photo shoot. And I had come up with, I was just at home brainstorming, trying to come up with decent names for photography. And everything I come up with was just not good. But finally, I came up with ravishing photography. And so I was going to get rid of photography, right? So I made it ravishing photos. And I was like, well, that's too long. So I made it ravphotos.com. That's really short, sweet, easy to remember. Mm-hmm. So I shrunk ravishing and I shrunk photos, but I could make my business ravishing photography. You know what I mean? But Rav Photos for short. So I go to the Neiman Marcus shoot, and granted, now remember, my name is not Rav. I go to the Neiman Marcus shoot, but because every photographer in the world at that time was using their name as their photography business, one of the most high-end model that they flew in from Miami the entire day was calling me Rav, because she goes, what is your photography business again? I said, it's Rav Photos. Or what is your website again? It's Rav Photos. So she just took it that my name was Rav. So all day long she was calling me Rav. And the first 2 or 3 times I said, my name's not Rav, and she goes, huh? Like she didn't even get it, because I was fixing her hair and, and I'm taking pictures, and I was like, it's not. And then I was like, you know what? Just,
I never knew where your nickname came from. So.
That's a whole different, I'm just going to let her call me Rav for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So she starts calling me Rav. Well, this was a 2-day shoot. So we come back the next day. Everybody, the crew's calling me Rav. Everybody's calling me Rav. There was 2 people on the shoot that knew me personally that are calling me by my name, because they know me, because I brought them in like you to help me out and just be my assistants. So, if I was stressed out about something, could you go get me a camera battery or something like that? And they were helping me out, and they just thought it was hilarious. So they were calling me Rav too. Hey, Rav, what's up? Would you like me to get you a new battery, Rav? So, by the end of the shoot, I remember where I'm packing my Pelican cases and everything up, and packing it was a donkey bags. Donkey bags back in those days. Wasn't Pelican cases. Look up donkey bags. Yeah. They were the #1 camera bags. It was just like an army canvas bag, and they were over $100 for a donkey bag. And I'm packing everything up, and the girl comes over and she pats me on the shoulder. She goes, "Thanks so much, Rav. It was so awesome. So good to work with you. Hopefully I get to work with you again. Hopefully you'll come to Miami and I'll see you." Because I was going out to Miami, and I was like, it's got a ring to it. You know what I mean? And so from that day forward, my website was Rav Photos, and I just started going by Rav. And it was so funny, because as I started going by Rav, my career in Dallas because I guess it was catchy and different.
Sure. Yeah. And I don't know any other Ravs.
Yep.
So.
And so, and that's how I ended up with the moniker name Rav, but it's not my real name.
Yeah.
But it's what I go by.
That's great, man.
So anyway, guys, we got 5 people in the room. We got 1 thumbs up. Badge, what's going on, buddy? Everybody needs one. Amy just wondered. Switchpad. Amy Preston, what's up? Matilda, howdy. Let's see who else do we have in here. Sorry, guys. Just talking to Noah, not getting a chance to check the chat that often. Maybe if I slide it over here.
You'll pay attention more to it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
That's fun.
Yeah. So I met Noah. He said earlier, I met Noah on American Horror Story season 2 or 3. Actually 3.
I don't remember.
It was 2.
It's been a while.
It was 2. It was it wasn't hotel, so it was 2.
I want to say I don't know. It might have been later. I want to say it was like 6, but I worked on
6.
a few, because they did 8 seasons?
Yeah, but I only worked on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Okay. Then it might have been 2 and 3.
Because I went to 911 after that. Yeah.
For some reason, I have 6 and 7 stuck in my head.
Because the first season was the one in the house, was Horror House or whatever. And then the second season was Hotel with Lady Gaga. And that's when I was on OJ right next door. We're on the same stage. I mean, on the sister stage right next door. And then the next season I worked on that one. And I think that's when I met you, but it may have been the season after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely remember a really fancy house, and then we shot at, I think it was Lancaster at the prison there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Oh, so did you go to the house, the exterior that was built in Agora Hills
I think so.
out by Calabasas, where it was just
super
that
long
huge
driveway. And
No.
okay, maybe I was thinking
No.
something else. Then.
So one of the seasons they built, it looked like a church kind of. On
Okay.
stage it looked like a church. So we had the interior was built on stage, the exterior was built out in Agora Hills.
Okay.
Yeah, and they spent $1 million building the exterior out in Agora Hills, and as soon as it was over and wrapped, they demolished it.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was a ginormous. Had this big spiral staircase. It was incredible.
I didn't actually watch the show, but did it last for the whole season?
Oh,
hopefully?
I don't know. I've never watched the show either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a TV guy.
Sure.
But yeah, we met at, I think the first time we really worked together was at the prison right in Lancaster. Yeah. And we had been on, hadn't we been on for like 16, 17 hours the day before? And then we ended up at 5:00 p.m. call time out in Lancaster at the prison. Yeah.
Yeah, something stupid like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's industry life for you.
Good days, good old days, good old film crew days. I kind of miss them though, because I had on my Facebook memories popped up today, and it was me doing my very first Facebook live stream, and we had just wrapped American Horror Story on the Fox lot.
Oh wow.
And I had been staff on OJ, and I was day playing on Horror Story. So my key card expired. My
Sure.
Fox lot card expired,
Yeah.
and I didn't even think about it. So I go to leave. It's like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm locked in. I can't get out. And then I see one of the scripties. I see one of the girls that's a script supervisor. She doesn't have a key card. So we're all walking around, and the lot's vacant, and we can't even get out the gate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So but we ended up finding somebody with a key and got out.
Interesting. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I do kind of miss it a little bit. The grass is always greener though, when you've worked 16-hour days and it's multiple in a row and you're just like over it. But at the same time, like you do miss it, especially with the state we're all in and the amount of work that people in the industry have been doing, which is almost nothing. Yeah, people are very grateful now to have the work, and they definitely miss it for sure.
I haven't done anything this year. I did one little production out in Palm Springs, which I just did, and it was for a reality TV show pilot. And there was no budget basically. It's a pilot for a reality TV show, which even real reality TV shows have no budget compared to what we're used to. But I was just so thankful to be on set. Yeah. I wasn't doing anything but operating C camera and slating camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
I've never slated a camera in my life, but I'd seen enough. I've seen enough camera slaters to slate cameras. I even was, doing the takes and everything, and asking the director, "What take is this again?" And stuff like that. And Clint Santiago, I believe. Clint, I hope I'm not butchering your last name. I've known the guy for 15 years, I guess. We're both he's still in Huntington Beach, but we both used to be in the MMA scene, and now he's in the reality TV scene. He produces reality TV shows. And so he had me out there just slating camera and helping out in a really nice house out in Palm Springs that they're doing a reality TV show. I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about this.
Right.
I should probably shut up.
It's the hush hush thing. Yeah. Sometimes you get those jobs that aren't released yet.
But. Yeah, you never know. That's one of the things that takes the fun out of working in TV and big budget TV is because you literally, it's not an NDA, but when you sign your what's called start work, they give you a packet on every show, and you could work 4 shows in a week. You got to fill out this Bible, a book of paperwork. Yeah. And in that paperwork, there's always a disclaimer, 2 disclaimer or 3 disclaimer pages in there that you got to go through an initial that you can't say anything on social media. You can't post anything on Facebook. You can't post a picture of anything on Snapchat. You can't take pictures. The last big production I worked on was with Aaron Paul on Westworld.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And you literally had to turn your phone in when you got to set. But you think, I didn't turn my phone in.
Oh, okay.
Out of your mind. Yeah, I didn't turn my phone in. And luckily I knew the key set PA, or the kid that was actually gathering phones. And I walked up there and he's like, I got to get your phone, Rav. And I said, nah, you know, I got to get my phone. He goes, okay, just keep it hidden. I was like, yeah, okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Your chat's flying. We got a lot of good comments coming in.
Yeah, let's see. We got 5 people in the room. We don't have very many people in it. Noah, you ran everybody off.
I know, it's my face, man.
It's
It
all
does
good.
that.
Let's see. We've been on 49 minutes though. We got Freedom Dove. What's going on, Freedom Dove? Tasha Teeling. What's going on? Good to see you guys. Amy Preston. This is the Amy show. Thanks. Yeah, since we're just talking to each other, did she take over the podcast? Anyway, guys, before I forget, Matilda got the teal mask. So I only have these 2 masks left, ladies. Let's see if I can put them up there, the camera. But we have the purple and the pink mask left. And it's they say I Heart America on them. So how could we figure out how we're going to give your choice of these away? What can we do?
Oh man, that's a great question. How do other YouTubers give stuff away?
Well, with Matilda, I just gave it away to the person that won it because I remember I had another girl. Somebody else was in the room. I can't remember who it was, but she's like, I don't wear a mask. I was like, oh, okay, then you're completely out of the running. So Matilda was she won it by default because she was the only other one in the room.
All right.
Amy Preston, Freedom Dove. Freedom Dove asked, who am I interviewing? This is my good friend, Noah Sargent, that I've known for, what do we know, 4 years now?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you that used to ask me, where's Bertha at? Where's Bertha at? Where's Bertha at? After I got the Snap-on truck Spirit, and you would ask me if I'd sold Bertha, and I'd say, no, it's in my buddy's driveway. This is my buddy. And he still hates me to a certain extent because I took up half of his driveway for 1.5 years without even asking him. I was just like, well, there you go, buddy. You got Bertha. Maybe you can Airbnb her while she's sitting there. No, I feel pretty bad. I took advantage of Noah with his kindness, let me park my RV in his driveway. But the thing I've figured out is when it comes to selling stuff, I'm very compassionate about it before I have to do it. I'm the world's worst at selling stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really good at it in my head. And then I started having to deal with the people,
the flakes and the
no-shows and driving back and forth from downtown LA to Fullerton to show them. And the thing that really burst my bubble is I had these two older gentlemen, these 2 older gay gentlemen, and they were pestering me about wanting to see Bertha. And I was like, I'm not doing it this week, guys. I'm not going to be in Fullerton, but I will meet you guys over there Saturday, certain Saturday. And then they basically told me, we want it. We've seen it. We've seen your videos. We want it. And I showed it to them and they didn't want it. And it was the sleeping. They didn't like the way the bed made up. And I told them that before I even, showed it to them. They were like, well, what's the sleeping arrangement? Because they're 2 guys, what's the sleeping arrangement? And I told them, I said, the dinette turns into a bed. Mm-hmm. I said, that's why I listed this thing. If you read the description, it says, this vehicle is great for a single guy. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of single girls go, why isn't it good for single girls? And Bertha is good for a single girl too, but it's a 40-year-old vehicle. So you need to be a little bit mechanically inclined, I feel like. And it's not that some girls aren't mechanically inclined, but I wouldn't want to sell it to like a girl right out of high school that doesn't know how to do anything, change the oil or,
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of things that Bertha has experienced since when I was traveling around in her, just little finicky things that I was able to get, pull over. I was like, oh, hell, something's not working, and pull over and tinker around with it and go, oh, I see what it is, and fix it and then just get in and go on down the road, to where if I hadn't have been mechanically inclined at all, I would be stuck on the side of the road, calling a tow truck, having it towed to a mechanic shop and spending $300 or $400 on something that was just a loose connection. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
But then I say that, and then when it comes to Spirit, the Snap-on truck, I've ruined that truck by just trying to mess with the freaking electrical system and not knowing how those 6-volt batteries worked and frying all kinds of stuff that I'm still dealing with.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least Bertha has solar.
That's true. Yeah.
We've been talking about putting solar on both of our rigs.
I put everything to get pretty much everything together to get the solar done on Spirit when I got her. But the battery, I was waiting to get the battery, and now I'm just at a standstill because I think I'm going to sell Spirit and get into something else. But we have 10, because I was all on this when I got Spirit. Yeah, I'm going to build it out, make an office out of it, make a studio out of it, and got 10 450-watt solar panels. And I actually could sell some of those possibly. Yeah. A buddy of mine, Brent and Kim, they live right down the street here. And we were looking at his house the other day, and he wants to do a solar system on his house because his electricity bill was through the roof.
Yeah.
And I told him, I'm like, dude, I got the perfect panels for you if we want to do that. So possibly we'll see what happens. May help him try to put I don't know anything really about house solar. You know, I've never done house, but it can't be that much different. You just got a grid tied into have to figure that out, and have to watch a lot of Will Prowse's.
Will Prowse, that's who it was. Yeah, I was going to say your buddy.
My buddy Will Prowse, who has got a house in Vegas now, and he's actually he just built a split 24-volt. He's using two big 24-volt 6-in-1s together, like the one that you got for Spirit. And he's got two of them because he's got so much solar, I guess. I don't know. And he's got them tied together.
Yeah. And he likes probably experimenting with that to see what systems he could build. And I'm waiting for him. He talked, 8 months ago about putting out a video about the reverse current stuff. So you could basically push the solar back into your grid safely. Because I would like to put on my toy hauler, basically that would be my solar panel array. And then that would, feed into my grid, right? My house, and then offset the power cost there without having to go into the roof because I'm still renting right now. So my question is, what we have to figure out is, how do you disconnect? Because if you want to take your toy hauler out, then we got to be able to disconnect it from the grid. Yeah. So I don't know, because I know you have to get approval from the city. To come back. Yeah, for your because they can pay you, like if you use so much, or if you use more, if you generate more electricity than you use, which you won't, but they have to be able to figure that out, because sometimes people get paid, if they have a huge system, then they're out like in Palm Springs where it's 115 degrees, which I actually found something out recently that I did not know, which is solar panels actually work better when it's not as hot. Yeah. When it's like 80 degrees, 85, 75, 85 degrees, they work better than, because there's these panels that we have, those first solar panels we have, they came from the solar farm out in Vegas that they built. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's where they came. They're industrial solar panels. That's why they're 450 watts a piece. Let's see. We got 6 people in the room, 3 thumbs up. Looks like, did Freedom Dove leave? Somebody leave. Amy Preston says, not leaving yet. Freedom signed off. Oh, Freedom Dove, we missed you. Bye, Freedom. We're at 57 minutes. I figure we'll run this an hour, guys. So we got about 3 minutes left. Someone ask a question. I'll ask it to Rav. I'll put him on the spot. Quick. Do it. Throw it in. No filter. He can't skip it because I'm here. I'm just kidding. I'm sweating. I'm really sweating now. I'm nervous. Go ahead. I thought you were going to ask me a question. Oh, no. Well, I was saying they could ask one because I could actually see the comments too. Yeah, you guys can ask a question. Here's your opportunity, folks. Here's your opportunity. Ask a question. How you doing, Badge? My favorite Canadian. So I may end up doing if I'm going to keep Spirit this winter. I don't want to freeze like I did last winter. So Badge is an expert at installing the diesel heaters. Oh, cool. The Chinese diesel heaters. Yeah, he installs them. He's installed them in several different rigs and other step vans. So he's in Canada, so I don't think he's going to be down this far south. Yeah. But yeah, I want to get a diesel heater probably installed in that thing. It's got a propane furnace in it, but it's never worked. So I don't know if I should take it and try to get that fit, or if I should try to figure out how to fix it, but I think the diesel heater is the way to go, because the diesel heater, you can hook it into the tank. You can splice it into the tank. Okay. Wow. And then you've got, almost. And they sip. They just sip diesel, to where a propane heater doesn't sip propane, and propane's not cheap. Yeah. I mean, it goes fast. When did you get the bug to do RV life? Because I
Uh,
know you've obviously had Bertha for a while, but that was something you thought about first, like for a long time, right?
well, I was living in Joshua Tree,
Mm-hmm.
and I was living out in Joshua Tree. And when I moved out to Joshua Tree, this is funny when it comes to van life. This is some inside information as well. It's a good thing having a guest because this stuff I don't think that I don't think that people would be interested in, or I don't think to tell people. But when I left Long Beach, I'd had my studio there I'd been in Long Beach for about 8 years, and I ended up basically started going broke because the photography business really started shrinking.
Yeah.
And when I lost my Getty contract, because I'd been a contract photographer with Getty for several years,
Mm-hmm.
and I made about 35,000 a year with Getty, and that's not doing a whole lot because Getty paid very well. It wasn't nothing for me to be laying in bed at 9:30 in the morning, looking at my phone, scrolling through Facebook or whatever, how we do in the morning when you wake up, and get a email message from Getty going, "Hey, just letting you know, Rav, we sold your so-and-so photo to the Baltimore Herald for $5,000. Oh yeah. I'd pop right out of bed in the shower. Ooh, it's going to be a good day. We're rich.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so it was just, but so basically Getty brokered your images. And if you got really good images, you could get really good prices for them. So that's why I got to go on. I ended up getting paid dually because I ended up being a staff photographer at NBC Universal for Savages, but I was also a Getty contract photographer. So I would take the official photos for the movie Savages. That's why I did the world tour. So I was getting paid a daily rate by NB Universal of $547 a day.
Wow.
Plus $136 per diem. Every plane was paid for. We were on private jets. The only time I flew commercial was when I met the cast because I had a different gig. So I had to fly Air France on an A380 Airbus, the largest jet in the world, Paris, France, from LAX to Paris to meet everybody in Paris. And then, so I was making over $600 a day, 7 days a week for 33 days. And then on top of that, I did all of the official. So like if we were doing a press junket, right, I could get there 2 minutes before when we'd be in Rome, or we would be in Sweden, or we would be in Switzerland. And all the photographers are fighting. These European photographers are fighting for position in the press, corps, or it's called the press pit. They're literally elbowing each other, and little French lady come in front of you, and that kind of, you've seen it on, and I would walk down there from the hotel room and walk right out in the front, and there would be a marker, and it would say Rav, NBC Universal staff photographer. And so I could stand right in the front. I'd be right in the front with all the press corps behind me.
And everybody else off.
And they'd be talking. I'd hear them like they'd be talking in like Italian or French, like, who's this guy? I knew what there's, who's this idiot? And he put his head in my face. I can't see now around his head. I could just hear him. And I would be taking my pictures. And then as soon as the press junket ended, I would go right up to my room and blast those pictures right off the NBC Universal. But then I would run back downstairs and take any behind the scenes if the cast was out roaming around the hotel, or like if Oliver was with if he was with Benicio del Toro, or if he was with John, or if he was with Salma Hayek, I would take pictures like candids of those guys, and then I would send them off to Getty. And then Getty would send them and say, this is, for the Savages. So there was certain photos that were owned by NBC Universal. But if I got other photos, there was certain, we did like a couple of film festivals, and NBC Universal didn't want any pictures for the film festivals. They didn't care, because it was like Zurich, Switzerland, and San Sebastian, Spain. So they really didn't care. They wanted London, Paris, Rome, Italy. They wanted those photos, but like San Sebastian and Zurich, they didn't. I don't know what it was, but they just, there was no thing for NBC Universal for there. So that left me free to just shoot photos for Getty. So that's kind of the way it worked. So it was a really good deal, and it was all 5-star hotels, room service, everything was paid for. So I didn't spend a penny of the per diem, not one,
Oh.
not a penny of it. So when I came back, I had a nice little chunk of change in the back in the bank, and yeah. So what were we talking about again?
Yeah, how you got into the RV world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I started going broke after I lost my Getty contract,
Mhm.
and I could not afford my studio. I had a big studio there in Long Beach. I really
Yeah.
couldn't afford it anymore. So I started looking around at like what I was going to do, because my savings was dwindling quick, because I was paying out about $2,000 a month in my bills than what I was bringing in now. And at a certain time, when you make more money, your overhead becomes more. So my overhead with my studio and everything was about 4,500 to 5,000 a month. But on a month that wasn't a great month, I was making $6,000. So there was months that, I was usually over 10. So 4 is not a big deal. You know what I mean? But then when I'm making $1,500 a month or 2,000 and all my bills are 4, I'm paying out of my savings every month.
Sure.
So it's like the Titanic. I had to bail, I had to pull my ripcord or my parachute. I had to jump and get out. So I started looking around at what I was going to do. And if I wanted to stay in LA, I was going to be living in somebody's bedroom, renting a room, which you know how that it goes.
Yeah.
Or I was going to find a little tiny efficiency apartment to live in. And I'd already done that when I first moved to Long Beach. I didn't want to do it again, which it's funny because I just, the place I had was 3,300 square feet. I couldn't imagine going back to like 700 square feet. Now 700 square feet's too much for me. I like tiny, what I mean? I like 150 to 200, like this room. But anyway, I started looking around and I was like, what about Palm Springs? I think things may be cheaper out there. So I started looking at houses in Palm Springs. Weren't that much cheaper. But then when I looked at Palm Springs, Joshua Tree popped up, and I'd heard all this stuff from, I knew that Joshua Tree was like the Doors, Jim Morrison's favorite place. So I started studying all this stuff about Joshua Tree. I was like, man, it looks like it'd be a great place to live. So I started going out and looking at these houses in Joshua Tree, and they were like $700 a month on 5 acres of land.
Wow.
And I was like, I could retire. I could retire and just retire for a while. And so I ended up finding a house on 5 acres of land, moving out there, and had it in my head that I was going to budget a certain amount, which I did. I just didn't realize the water pipes out there were horrible. So it wasn't anything for me to leave for a weekend to come to LA and spend it with a girl I was dating, which is what happened. I went home, a water line had broke and had been running for 2.5 days. Yeah. So the water bill comes in and it's $400, $500. So the landlord or the owner of the house started taking care of it, but then they started stipulating, I have to be there. You can't be leaving the property. And I'm like, dude, I leave the property all the time. You know what I mean? So, long story short is I burned through my
savings,
slush cash pretty quickly in a year, but I took a complete year off of as retired and was going to do something like this. And I started my original podcast out there. You can find pictures and stuff, and those episodes that are just, there's no video. That's why I did those when I first moved to Joshua Tree. And when I first moved there, all these people, all my friends were coming out because they wanted to come out to Joshua Tree. That all dried up after about a month, 2 months, you know what I mean? And nobody wanted to come out. So, I mean, it is 136 miles from LA, but, so I ended up just basically doing nothing for a year, trying to figure it out. And I couldn't figure out the podcasting thing to do the video part of it. I couldn't put those two together because I just didn't have enough knowledge at the time. And, I've been doing audio for years. I still struggle with the audio. You know what I mean? Audio just kicks me in the right between the legs. And it's not that hard for everybody else, but just for some reason I have all kinds of problems with it. And but after a year I was like, I got to do something. And plus I was bored. I was ready to go back to work. I was ready to work. And I got just out of the blue an offer to come into town or to come into LA and, work on a couple of shows, day play. And I did that. And I realized right away that I was spending as much money or more money, because you go work 15 hours a day. I would just go find a hotel room and spend $140 for a hotel room and basically make no money at all.
Yeah.
Just for an opportunity to come into LA and hang out with people and get free food. I love the, getting crafty and, crafty again and getting a catering and actually have food. And not have to cook me something or go into town and grab a burrito and Joshua Tree or whatever. And then I started thinking about it. It's like, I got to figure out a way to do this. So I tried to couch surf on a couple of, and I'm too old for that. You know what I mean? I didn't get into that. And then I started cheaping out on the hotels, and I found these ratty, like in Compton for like $80 a night. And they were just disgusting. And I was like, I can't do this. And then I don't remember what it was, but I started getting into I started seeing some van life videos on YouTube. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I saw some of these vans. I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, oh, I could probably get like an RV. And I saw this guy, Just the Incredible. A lot of my van life people will know who I'm talking about. And he had this Dodge Explorer that was like a 99 Dodge Explorer, which is like a regular van, but it's a dually, but it's a regular Dodge van. And it's a high top, but it's not much bigger than a regular van, but it's a complete RV on the inside with a bed and everything, but it's tiny. But I was like, that is what I want. I want one of those. So I started looking around at Explorers, and they were $26,000 to $33,000. So now I'm in my head going, okay, I'm going to find one in a dealer wherever in the United States and just buy it and have a payment on this RV and just go back and forth and work in LA. And then I was like, no, I'm not, because I don't want any payments. I've gotten out of that mentality. I don't want any payments. So I started looking around on Craigslist at regular used RVs. And I found 2 or 3 that I was interested in. I found this one that was a Chevy G30 that was 4-wheel drive. And it had all been redone. It had been remodeled on the inside, but it didn't look as nice as Bertha on the outside. But it was 4-wheel drive with big 4-wheel drive tires. And I was, in my head building this expedition vehicle, putting a big roof rack on it and light bars and, making it, wrapping it with like a gray material, gray, and making it look like a real expedition vehicle. That's what I was wanting. And then on a side note, I'd seen Bertha, but I had my heart set on this 4-wheel drive because I wanted a 4-wheel drive, whatever I got. But a regular Dodge Explorer is not 4-wheel drive. But I had it in my head, I was going to, if I even bought a Dodge Explorer, I would just convert it. That $10,000 minimum. Yeah. And
Sure,
a Dodge,
sure.
Dodge is, I didn't know it at the time. I thought, $2,500, $3,000 to convert it. Yeah. And you find out
Those commercial
10
vehicles.
to $20,000 to convert it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Dodges are not easy to convert, so nobody does them anymore. You can find them, but there's some kind of problem. They're not actually even 4-wheel drive a lot of times. They just look like 4-wheel drive, and they'll work as 4-wheel drive, but it's not a real good 4-wheel drive setup for a Dodge. But evidently Fords are super easy. There's a company called Off-Road U-Joints that Joe Rogan has actually talked about on his podcast, and they have a Instagram page. And they do RVs, but it's all Fords. They only do Fords. Because I contacted them about doing Bertha, and they're like, no, dude, we don't do Dodges. I don't think anybody does anymore. And so anyway, I was still couch surfing, waiting for this guy to come down in price on this 4-wheel drive RV, because it wasn't out of my price range, but it was all my money. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. I wanted to buy an RV or whatever I got and have a couple of $1,000s in my pocket to play with, to buy some light bars and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But he wanted to where I was a couple of $100s short, and I was going to sell a couple of things, to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking it's going to be every bit. If I break down on the way home in the damn thing, I'm screwed. I can't even afford a tow truck to get it the rest of the way home,
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the way I was looking at it. And then I came in to work I got hired to work on American Crime Story, The People versus O.J. Simpson. And that was in 2012, I believe. Yeah. And was it 2012, 2013 is when it went into production, if I remember right. And I was like, it was killing me. And I was like, I spent one weekend sleeping in my Land Rover in the parking garage at the Fox lot.
Mm-hmm.
I worked all day long like Friday, worked all day, or I'm sorry, Thursday and Friday, worked both of those days, 15, 16-hour days. As soon as we wrapped on the Fox lot, I walked straight to the parking garage, got in my Land Rover, reclined the seat back, and crashed out, went to sleep, woke up the next day, went right back to work right there at the Fox lot, got off the next day, went back, went to sleep, and then woke up and then drove to Joshua Tree home.
Mm.
And on the way to Joshua Tree, I was just thinking, I got to figure something else out. This is ridiculous. And then the other thing that is almost hard to say is I was having to leave my dog, Charlie, in Joshua Tree. So that was freaking me out. That was really freaking me out because I was leaving him at home by himself. I was actually putting down all of these newspapers in the door entrance because I knew he'd have to go out to potty, and I'm not there to take him out to potty. So I was like, I have to figure something else out.
Yeah.
And so that weekend, driving back to Joshua Tree, I was like, you know what? Instead of waiting on this 4-wheel drive rig, I should go look at that other rig. And it was down by San Diego in Escanaba or Escondido or whatever it's called down there. I was like, I'm going to go look at this other rig. It's exactly in where my price, where I want it to be. You know what I mean? And so I woke up that next morning, which was Saturday morning, and I contacted that guy and I'm like, hey man, I'm out here in Joshua Tree, but I would actually like to look at your RV. And he's like, yeah, sure, come on out. And so I jumped in the truck and headed that way by 10 o'clock. I was in the truck on the way to San Diego, or where it was parked in this RV storage place. And I was there by noon, 1 o'clock, looked at it. The ceiling was all collapsed. You remember that? I fixed that. There was some wiring issues, all that stuff I've fixed, been replaced. Noah witnessed me tearing all the wiring out of the ceiling and repairing it, fixing all the ceiling, where basically what had happened was the back fan, the what do you call this? The exhaust fan or whatever it is.
The top for the sunroof, whatever.
Yeah, it's it's your fantastic fan, or I put a Max Air in there to replace it, but it had the old regular fan that you did the lid up and then you turn the fan on, and that thing had weathered so much it had cracked and it was just leaking water down through there, and he never fixed it. So it wasn't that it was, because it's a fiberglass top RV, so it wasn't that it was the freaking top of the RV, which is every RV, it's the actual RV that's leaking. No, it was because the freaking lid to the fan was cracked and he wouldn't even put any silicone on it, and he just let it do all kinds of water damage because it was sitting in storage. So that was a big issue for me, looking at it, just because it looked so bad. And then every time you walk past the kitchen into the bathroom, you hit your head on the stuff that was falling down. And you know me, I'm not big into construction anymore or building stuff. So I didn't know that I would want to fix that myself. And I knew it'd be cost somebody to fix it. But then it was in my price range. So I look at Bertha, and the guy had his heart set on the amount of money he wanted. And I was standing there looking at it, and I was at the point, yeah, screw it. Just give him the money he wants and just get it. And then I'll have something to sleep in and bring to LA, and I can live in this thing and then come back, bring it back and forth to Joshua Tree. I can go, instead of having to go back every 2 days to check on Charlie, I can put Charlie in there and go back I can go from the lot and check on Charlie once a day at lunch, whatever I have to do. And so I was like, and just something hit me, and I went, you know what, man? I said, because of that water damage and stuff, I said, this is what I'll do. I have this much money. And he had went around, and I basically took some money out of that full price that he was asking. And I said, and I said in my head, if he goes for this, I'll get it. If he doesn't go for it, I won't get it. It's the way it is. Because I wanted that other 4-wheel drive anyway. I really did. But I was like, he's not going to do it. And so he came back around. And I said, I'll give you this for it, cash. And he looked at me like, no. I don't, it's in storage. I don't need to sell it. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, it's all good. And it didn't hurt my feelings at all. I was like, okay, yeah, no worries. I didn't mean to insult you or anything. And I was like, I appreciate you showing it to me. Thank you, man. I said, if you fix that ceiling, and at that time, the tires were all rotted on it because it had been sitting in storage. I said, you put some new tires on it, fix that ceiling. And there was a couple other things I mentioned. I said, yeah, let me know, because, then I'll definitely give you what you're asking for it. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. And he was kind of snarky about it. But I think that set in that, because he had showed it to some other people too. And he goes, He goes, "You got cash?" I said, "Yeah." So I reached in my pocket and pulled the cash out. And he goes, "You know what?" He goes, "I think you're going to take care of this thing. And that's what means more to me than anything." He goes, "You seem like you like it and you'll take care of it." He goes, "Yeah, I'll take that." And then the other thing is he just used it for a surf rig. That's all he used it for.
Okay.
So the bathroom carpet was buried that deep under sand because
Whoa.
he would come in his wetsuit, pull his wetsuit off and just jump in the shower. So that's all he used it for. I had to wash that much sand out of the holding tank.
I was
Yeah,
gonna,
because it was full of sand,
yeah.
and I never was able to get it all out. Somebody told me I was gonna have to drop the tank and to get it all out of there. But anyway, so I bought Bertha and took her to Joshua Tree, and then just started coming back and forth to LA. And then at a certain point, I ended up started spending 2 or 3 weeks in LA and not even going home and paying on my house in Joshua Tree. And then I went home at one time and there was a 60-day vacate notice on the door because with all the hipsters going out to Joshua Tree, buying up all the property out there, the property value went through the roof because all the hipsters are buying the property from LA because it's cheap and turning it into Airbnbs. So my landlord decided she wanted to sell the house I was renting from her. And when I rented the house, I had the option to buy, but because I wasn't familiar with Joshua Tree and wasn't sure I'd want to stay living there, I didn't take that clause up. I never really took that clause up, and it bit me. It came back to bite me. But then I didn't really want a house at Joshua Tree anyway, so it all worked out. But that's how I actually got into van life, is I started doing it as a part-timer. And then when I got the 60-day vacate notice on my house, I was like, well, I will just rent another house. So I got out, started looking at houses in and around Joshua Tree, and I found my dream house in Yucca Valley, which was 6 miles away from my other house. And it was beautiful. It was right down the road from Walmart. It was actually a flat roof, modern house, which is what I like, the Palm Springs type houses. And it was just exactly what I dreamed of as a house, like a container house. It was like a container house, but it wasn't a container, but it looked like a container house. It was all modern and super, super cool. Little house, not very big, but I liked it a lot better than the house that I was actually renting. And it was $50 a month cheaper. So I was stoked. And then I got bit on the side of my head by a camel spider and got deathly ill. And the landlord couldn't get a hold of me because I was supposed to sign the paperwork and I was in bed deathly sick for like a week. And then when I came out of my coma, she had already leased it. And by this time I only had a few days left to get out of my house, and it kept drawing nearer and nearer and nearer. And I kept thinking, and I couldn't find another house. And I kept thinking, if worst comes to worst, I can just stay in my RV until I rent a storage, stay in my RV until I find another house. And during that time, I'm on YouTube all at night, just looking at van life videos going, why am I even looking for another house? And so when I couldn't find another house, I ended up just moving into Bertha, and the rest is history.
Yeah,
been doing it ever since. Anyway, guys, that story took 22 minutes. No one knows my stories. Anyway, we still have 5 people in the room. Amy got to go. Good to see you, Amy. Let's run through really quick. I didn't give away the other mask. If anybody wants one of these 2 masks, send me an email at ravholly@gmail.com, and we'll tell me which mask you want, ladies. So let's run through. We had Freedom Dove, Amy, Badge. Thank you guys. Matilda. Looks like that's all we had in the JBK. Thank you guys so much for joining me with my very first guest, Noah Sargent. Do you have anything you want to plug, Noah?
Oh man, my YouTube's kind of been dormant.
Hacking Hollywood.
Hacking Hollywood. Yeah, it's kind of one of those things you kind of just, if you're not persistent, it becomes that pile of trash that you need to get to that you haven't gotten to, you know?
People have no idea about YouTube. It's a thing. It's a different animal. And with somebody like me that always has good intentions, it's very easy to get discouraged, and then you just stop doing it. And if you miss it for a week, that turns into 2 weeks, and 2 weeks turns into 2 months, and 2 months turns into 5 months. You're looking back at your last video going, 5 months ago? It just seems like yesterday.
Right.
Yeah. And then it's hard to get back on that horse.
Yeah. That's where I'm at for sure. But What I'm doing for work, though, I'm doing live streaming, right? So that's obviously a big thing now. I was doing it before it got really popular. So if you have a company or know somebody that needs consulting, that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm going out to companies and evaluating their systems, kind of like what we did, and,
Yeah,
and
here.
just giving them recommendations and stuff. So
Yeah, it's so funny because I have such a hard time with this little simple stuff, and Noah has a complete rack that's just full of stuff that makes this look like child's play that he configures and gets it all up and running. I mean, you can stream what, 8 cameras?
well, that was my first switcher. I own 4 switchers now, so 2 smaller ones, and then I bought the ME2, which does 24K stream video inputs. So
you can do 20 different cameras with 4K.
A 24K cameras, into that switcher. It can do super source, so like in a news program where you have like multiple people, you could do like a.
But you got to be running hardline for that, right?
Yeah, everything would be hardline. Yeah. But you could do like 5 different people on the screen at the same time from 5 different camera angles, which is really cool. But yeah, it's
so how many camera angles can you do, or how many camera inputs can you do for streaming through Wi-Fi? Probably 4.
So the cool thing is it's all mixed down. So I can still have 20 cameras. It just comes down to a single feed, right? And we just stream out that one.
It's just 1020 or 1024 by 768, or
I can do up to 4K for streaming as well, technically, because I have a Ultra Studio 4K
on Wi-Fi.
No, it's all hardline.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Wi-Fi, I generally
1024 by 768.
I'll do 720p for Wi-Fi, honestly, but I don't really like Wi-Fi at all for live streaming. And even like cellular data, what we'll do is we'll do a bonded network. So you'll take multiple feeds, like your hotspot and your cell phone and another device. And so you bond all of those network connections together. You can do this in your RV too. And so basically it becomes one network, but you have the consistency. So if one of those drops your bandwidth, you'll have the other 2 to carry it. But your computer just sees it as one source. So
gotcha.
Yeah, it's really cool that way.
I was amazed when I moved in here, because even when I had Verizon Fios, which was the fastest internet back in the day you could get when I was in Long Beach, that's the fiber optics Fios. So about 42 was as fast as it would go, and I've gotten almost 80 in here. But this is actually 5G. I didn't realize it. It's a 5G, the new 5G. So it's super, super fast.
Very cool.
Which my Verizon hotspot will do 24 to 32. But when you start doing gaming and stuff, you need a faster connection. Yeah. All right, guys, we're pushing an hour and a half now, so we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much, Noah, for stopping in, man.
It was fun. Yeah.
The COVID bump.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. My mic was probably covering my face half the podcast, but that's okay. I'm going to figure this out. So Noah is helping me set this thing up a little bit more professionally. And Noah's got a piece of equipment that he's going to be gifting me for, hopefully, if things work out here. And it's a little, it's a prosumer switcher.
Yeah, it's called an ATEM Mini.
Yeah.
And you may have heard of it if you're a tech, but basically you can take 4 cameras and interswitch them. Actually, you could do 4 inputs. So you can even do a computer screen and overlay and do lower thirds. Right. You can do that digitally too with the software he's using, but you can do it within the switcher, so it doesn't take as much resources on your computer to do those things. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah,
once we get it all set up.
So that'll be something interesting, because I'm going to be setting up some different camera angles and running. I figure I'll run 4 cameras at one time, maybe 3. I'll probably start with 2. One would be at your face, one would be at my face, and then there'll be a wide angle back there that's like this camera now. Yeah. So be an A camera, B camera, and C camera. And then I'll sit here and switch back and forth, whoever's talking. Sure. Basically, since I don't have a producer.
There you go.
I'll be the producer.
You have to do 2 things at once. We'll see how that goes.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of American Nomad. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope I mentioned everybody that was in the chat. I want to thank you guys for stopping by, and thank you, Noah, for stopping by. Yeah. And that's going to do it for this episode. And remember, guys, keep looking up, because that's where it all is. Peace.